So thank you very much, Gülsah, for joining us today at our interview for the Entrepreneurship Forum. I hope you're well.
Thanks. I hope you're well as well.
Thank you. So how about you just start by telling us a bit about yourself and what you do and how you got to where you are today?
Yes, sure. So let me try to keep it quite short, not too long, and you can just stop me if it gets too long. So let's start by saying what I'm doing today. I'm Gülsah. I'm an investor and head of portfolio at Axel Springer, which is today one of the world's largest media companies. For those of you who might not know Axel Springer, so in Germany and Europe, we are publishing Welt and Bild, and globally, one of our best known news outlets is Business Insider, which by today has more than 300 million unique visitors per month. So it's by far one of the biggest digital media outlets. And we also own the leading classifieds, jobs and real estate classifieds companies in Europe. And in this role, I'm also a supervisory board member of Stepstone, which is one of the world's largest e-recruitment companies. And it makes 1/3 of the overall EBITDA of Axel Springer. And to just give you a feeling, within the last 10 years, we did around more than 100 investments. So only one company has so much importance for us. So it's huge. And I'm at the same time also heading our operational pricing and monetization team, where we are supporting our portfolio companies on pricing and monetization and all kinds of commercial question strategies and projects. And before that, at Axel Springer, I used to work as an advisor to our portfolio companies. So I advised a number of our startups, and at the same time also spent some time in Silicon Valley, where I headed our West Coast office in Mountain View. Basically, I did two things. I screened early stage investment opportunities for Axel Springer, and at the same time, I built a digital hub for corporate partners of Axel Springer that would like to see the Silicon Valley connect with startups, invest in startups there, etc. So practically sharing our experience in the market there. And before that, I worked as a consultant for about 6 years, lastly at McKinsey & Company, primarily in the TMT, so tech, media, and telco sector. And before that, I spent some time in Montreal. And before that, as you all know, I studied at EBS University and did my university degrees there.
Wow, that's quite a journey you've been on. So I also know that you grew up in a multicultural environment and also grew up multilingual. What do you think were the advantages or disadvantages of that, and how do you think it helped you in your further life?
Yes, sure. I mean, I definitely think that especially learning languages pretty early on, ideally after birth, so to say, is very, very good for everyone, because it helps you going forward to learn other languages just as quick. And at the same time, being raised with different cultures also helps you to be more open-minded also when it comes to your business life later and how you interact with different nationalities, or how you look at different companies that are being started by diverse founders. So I think you really also value or start valuing the value of diversity and internationality much more if you yourself come from this kind of background.
Well, yeah. At EBS, obviously, you fit in very well into the multicultural, multilingual kind of field, obviously, because we represent that a bit.
Yeah, to be honest, I think I was, sorry for interrupting, but
no problem, yeah.
I really think that at EBS back then, so I did so now everyone knows how old I am, but I started my university in 2006. And back then, I think I was the second ever, at least female or student in general, with Turkish background. So with migration background, Turkish migration background. And by now I know there have been a bit more, which was also thanks to the Vodafone Chancen Scholarship that supported a number of very talented young students who wanted to go to EBS University and other private universities. But I didn't feel like there were so many similar-minded. Obviously, we have the exchange semesters with the very international students, but like if you look at the migration background students, that was not as much as I would have hoped, but I'm sure it's now way better. So yeah, you tell me.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you that if you look at the background of the even like the alumni body, it really has become a lot more international, which is really nice. And very beneficial for us too now. So if you look back on your studies, what do you think was the best thing for you, or the best thing about EBS for you?
Actually, as always in life, at least for me, I always don't talk about the companies I worked for, but of the people I worked for and with. And that was, again, here, the people I met along the way. I mean, for most, or first of all, obviously, all the fellow students. So this was a very unique network now, or is today a very unique network of friends, but also, I would say, business contacts. So I would say definitely the people first. Second, obviously, the opportunities and going forward that you are given. So I come from a very, very small place between Aachen and Cologne called Düren, which with like 100,000 plus citizens, so it's quite small. And I'm the only one, or the first one ever in the history of my family who went to university. So in my surrounding, I would say I had a lot of people who supported me, starting with my mom, who was my most passionate supporter, but I did not really have role models show me opportunities and horizons where I can go, right? And more or less, the EBS was the first place ever where I learned with my intelligence or with my talent what all I could achieve. So it was for me like, I don't know, Schlaraffenland, you would call it in German. So like a paradise of opportunities. And I was like, oh, wow, what shall I do now? I mean, all the companies visiting you, seeing the older students, talking to professors who would tell you what they did, what's possible. So I would say these two. So people and opportunities given.
Wow.
And last but not least, to make it a bit fun, obviously the parties and the wine, because it's a wine area.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the big advantages of studying in Österreich-Winkel.
makes it nicer to study with a glass of wine.
Exactly. Do you have any stories or any favorite moments of the Entrepreneurship Forum? Because you've obviously been to a few already. What do you think was the most interesting, or the moment that you really remember most about it?
So my biggest highlight is always, so the last 2 years, or have I been to, so I'm supporting the Entrepreneurship Forum also as part of the advisory board, so like a supporting board. And I think I've been now in this role to 2 or 3, I don't recall actually, but my highlight is always the final situation where the two organizers or main organizers, the chairs, so to say, go on stage, students, and then they say thank you and bring on stage everyone who was involved as part of the team, and also the younger students who supported all day. So I think this is a beautiful image, because at the end you see all students and all efforts on one stage. And I love this moment. So for me, this is always the highlight, to be very true. And the second highlight is the pitch sessions. So I had the chance and the luck to be in the jury within the last 2 years. And obviously this is my home turf, because I get to look at exciting companies and then decide who will get the prize or prizes. But I think this is amazing, because it's very surprising to see that all the time there are students or founders with different business models and ideas that I have not seen before, even though I'm so well connected in the scene. And this shows how valuable also for investors this kind of wholly student organized forums are. So it's a great source of generating leads. And for corporates, it's also a great source. I mean, I work for Axel Springer, so I can say that it's also a great source of finding future talent, be it in finance, tech, you name it. But it's also a great source to find those, because those that organize it are great, and the supporters, but also those that attend, that are interested in these kind of topics, that attended as students, as a guest, so to say. And last but not least, my personal highlight was last year when we talked about investments and innovation and future forwarded investments. And I was on stage with Georg Hofler, and everyone knows him from Höhle der Löwen. Me too, to be honest. I mean, I learned later that he's a good friend, or he knows my boss, Andreas Wiele, our former executive board member at Axel Springer, quite well. But back then I didn't know him in person, and I really enjoyed talking to him, because obviously he represents the more established generation, and I'm still a very young, in terms of age, not in terms of experience, but in terms of age, a very young investor. So it was really interesting to see the different perspectives on how we look at investments, investment opportunities, and how our investment approach differs, or even not. There were a lot of parallels. So I would say these were my 3 highlights. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I watched you during the panel discussion, and I was wondering, what is a sign or one of the things that you most look for before investing in a startup?
I mean, the answer probably many investors will tell you now, my first part of the investor, but I will add some more specifics to that, making it more special, the answer. So obviously the team, right? And the earlier stage a company, the younger a company, the more important the team, because you do not have numbers and successes and client statistics to hide behind. So then actually the team and the team's vision is key, because ultimately you have to rely on what they're saying and believe them. And as you know, as investors, believing is a hard thing. So we rather rely on numbers and analyze, especially for me as a later stage focused investor. But as I'm more and more mentoring younger stage startups, I would say the team is key. And here, as with everything in life, experience supports and helps. So the more you talk to different teams and founders, the more you see which ones were successful versus those that were not, the better you can decide whether a team will make it or not. So, and now comes my C vitamin, or my special part, so to say. I would always look for diverse teams. So there are a number of statistics highlighting that diverse teams, particularly those with women in the founding team, deliver higher returns in the long term, and that are also more sustainably focused. So not only growth, but also sustainable growth, not mere cash burn. And I would say, especially in these challenging times during COVID-19, where cash management is king, and it's very important to also have your cash under control and to prolong your run rate if possible. I would say that diverse teams, at least if we look at the statistics and my personal experience, tend to be a better investment.
Okay. What you mentioned COVID, obviously it's the #1 thing at the moment, and everyone's talking about it still. And for you, it must also be a very apparent situation when when coming into contact with startups, especially. How or what have you learned from Corona? What have you really, how has it changed the way you view startups, or understand what they actually need to deliver?
Mm-hmm. So I would say, if you look at the early stage companies, before Corona, everybody would look for massive growth within a company. So how fast can a company scale in terms of clients, products, or offerings sold, and investments could be as high as possible, basically, and nobody would ask why you need this amount of money to invest. So it was all about growth. And I think COVID-19 led to the hard fact that a lot of startups needed to start doing cash management to increase their run rate. Hence, the time until the money they have on their banks are available to do investments and keep the machine up and running lasts. So I think this was a very big learning moment for me, to say that not only growth is important, but also sustainable growth. So companies that can prolong their run rate by taking some measures provided by the government, for example, when it comes to short time work, so Kurzarbeit, where you would save a big part of your personnel costs, or other measures. So I would say this opened my eyes a bit, seeing that it's always good to also see some cost discipline within the startups, even though this is not the main focus, but something like Corona can always hit. And for later stage companies, I actually had a very surprising moment. So to be honest, within Axel Springer, we thought, okay, now let's open our long list of interesting targets and see whether the one or the other will now be at a lower valuation available. And I was very surprised to see that many startups did their homework, either because they have good advisors or they know it themselves, that they somehow managed to convince us that currently it's not the right time for fundraising because of the current situation, and or those that would just say happy to fundraise and get an investment from you, but not to a lower valuation. So the confidence of later stage startups, at least in the fields where I'm looking into, marketplace models, future of work, HR tech, this was not the case. And I think it's a great thing, because companies manage somehow to be still existing in a successful way and postpone their investment rounds because they were not that much under stress in the areas where I look into. Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting to hear. I'd really love to know what your favorite part of your job is, actually, after hearing all these different things that you do and that you've been very successful at. What is the one thing you are most passionate about in your job?
Actually, I'm a very, very, very curious person. I always was like this, like as a child and at university. So I'm a very curious person, and my job really helps me to feed this curiosity, because in different dimensions, right? So I get to meet every day, or let's say very regularly, new people, very inspiring people, particularly founders, but also some kind of contractors or whatsoever for my team or department. I get to look into very different business models, companies of different stages. Also great for a very curious and driven person. And last but not least, I get to work with very different people. So I have a very diverse team. Actually, it's currently not diverse. It's 100% female, but I'm very proud of it. But still, I would say in a bigger surrounding. So the nationalities I have in my team and beyond are very diverse, and I like that a lot as well, because I also like to explore different personalities and how they interact with each other and how together we can bring forward success, and that worked out. So I would say being able to still be curious on a daily basis in my job and always learning something new is something that makes it very special and helps me to stay motivated every day so it doesn't get boring, because I don't like being bored. Yeah.
Well, I will definitely take that piece of advice from you. And we are actually at the end of our interview now. However, we have this tradition of asking one question that is a bit out of the ordinary and a bit weird, but
Okay.
we would love to ask you, if you were an object, what would you be?
So a very spontaneous answer actually would be a world map. And why a world map? Actually a digital AI-powered world map that is updating itself on a very, very frequent basis, not only in terms of geography locations, but also in terms of important facts about the geographies, starting with poverty, hunger levels, health informations like COVID-19, but also potential on startups, etc. So I would imagine like a map that is interactive and updating itself on all dimensions of data, because I'm very curious. I love data. I'm very eager to learn more, and I would say it's an object that feeds the needs of people in this term on a global level. So very international level would be my thing. Yeah.
Wow.
And so I mean, obviously I'm in the mobile office, no surprise. So sorry for the loud fire department.
No problem. I love your answer. Very, very unique. We haven't had that answer in any way. So yeah, thank you so much for your time and for sharing so much. And yeah, we hope to welcome you at the next Entrepreneurship Forum, hopefully in 2021. And yeah, I hope you have a lovely day and see you soon.
Thanks so much, and I definitely have it on my calendar. And Axel Springer was very happy with the last two entrepreneurships, and I think it's one of the very few unique forums where actually all tech companies, or those companies looking for tech talent, and investors, as I said, looking for investment opportunities and companies that they may not have had on their radar yet, should definitely attend. So it's a must save the date for next year. Thanks so much.